Morning.
Hello, morning.
The Archbishop says that the reforms policies of immediate detention and deportation are isolationist, knee-jerk and so on. Prime Minister said yesterday that if you come to this country illegally, you will face detention and return. What exactly is the difference between Sir Keir and Mr Farage's policies?
The fundamental difference is that Reform and Nigel Farage want to provoke anger, but they don't actually want to sort the problems that we face in front of us. So what we're clear about is that in order to retain public confidence in the system, it has to be fair, it has to be humane. Where people don't have the right to be here, of course we'll take action to remove them. And removals are up under this government. But alongside that, we've always had a proud tradition in this country of supporting those facing persecution. But in order to maintain that tradition, the tradition that the British people have always demonstrated, then absolutely we do need to make sure we've got control of our borders. And under the Conservatives, we saw a big increase in the use of asylum hotels, for example. We saw big increases in the number of people crossing the Channel. Now, that's something that's built up over many years. It's not going to be quick and easy to fix, but we will.
Well, that's the past, and that is also about motivation. But what is the difference between what you would actually do? Sir Keir's words, detention and deportation, are almost exactly the words that Mr Farage uses.
Well, of course, we will make sure that people who have no right to be in this country are removed from this country. That's right. It's what people expect. It's what this government will deliver. But alongside that, what you have to do is deal with the huge backlog, process cases more quickly and make sure that people aren't left around for months and years on end in expensive accommodation. It's all very good and well for Reform to chase headlines and whip up that kind of anger because they don't actually want to fix it. It's in their interest
You're criticising the past
to fix it.
You're criticising the past, you're criticising Reform, but numbers coming across the Channel are up to record level at this time of the year under you, and actually there's no sign of the gangs being smashed. In fact, the average number of people coming on a boat has climbed under your administration. So let me ask you again. And this is a straightforward thing. There doesn't have to be a problem with it. There is really no difference between what you're saying and what Mr Farage is saying, is there?
Well, the difference is we'll actually take action to do it. It's one thing to provoke anger, and I understand the frustration. I understand the frustration that people feel, because I understand when they see, for example, asylum hotels and big numbers of people in their community, I understand how that can make people feel. Of course, there can be no excuse for what is rightful protest overstepping the mark. But Nigel Farage and Reform, they don't actually want to sort this problem. It is in their interest. They think their political interests are served by whipping up anger rather than fixing problems.
You keep saying they're whipping up...
them and us is that we'll fix this.
You keep saying they're whipping up anger. The anger is there already. You see it in Epping, we see it in Diss, we see it in other places. Let me ask you this. There is a difference between you and Mr Farage. He says that he's happy to change the law or leave international conventions to achieve his ends. Put it another way, he means what he says, and you don't.
We do believe there needs to be reform of the ECHR, and that's what the Home Secretary is looking at. But we also believe as a government that our responsibilities under international law matter too, and our standing in the world matters as well. And that's why, yes, we have to have clear control over our own borders, a fair system with rules that are followed, and we will act to remove people who don't have a right to be here. But as with all of this,
to be
what
clear,
Nigel Farage overlooks is that migration
let's
has
forget him for a minute. Let's talk about you.
My view is that migration has always been an important part of our national story, that the British people have demonstrated enormous generosity over many, many periods of time. Look at the approach that we took to Ukrainian refugees.
I just want to get something clear about what...
In order to maintain that, we have to have clear enforcement of the rules.
To be clear, what you've just said is that you want to see changes in the European Convention human rights.
The Home Secretary has committed to looking at the Article 8 provisions to seeing whether they need updating and reforming for the modern age. Yes, that's right. She said that's something that we are considering.
Are you ready that if you discover that it's not possible to make those changes, because nobody else agrees, to leave the ECHR or to suspend its use, as some of your colleagues who are Home Secretaries in the Labour Party want to do?
I think that's rather getting ahead of ourselves, given that we have the work underway around the ECHR, and we do believe that work can be undertaken in order to...
You say getting ahead of ourselves. You had a year. I mean, you've got to get on with it.
You just jumped ahead. So I just said we're committed to reforming Article 8 and looking at the changes that are needed. Let's do that and see where that gets to then leap ahead and with the kind of extrapolation that you've made there, I think is a bit much.
I'll tell you why this is an issue. The Prime Minister says that it may be time to negotiate, or that you were saying, that we may need to think again about the ECHR. But the Prime Minister says, and I'm quoting him here, people who say that it may be time to renegotiate or suspend compliance with the ECHR are not serious people, including, and this is me, including people like Sir Malcolm Rifkind and the former Labour Home Secretaries David Blunkett and Jack Straw. The Prime Minister is saying people who want to reform, change, renegotiate, suspend the ECHR are not serious people. Now, which is it?
So we have been clear, the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister alike, that we're going to look at Article 8 of the ECHR around the right to family life and how that is being applied by the courts. But yes, our standing...
And changing the ECHR won't, as he suggests, put us in the same moral camp as Vladimir Putin.
Look,
that's what the Prime Minister said.
Our standing in the world matters. If we want to strike trade deals with countries, and we've had great success in recent years in striking those trade deals in the last year, then we need to be a country that's taken seriously. We need to be a country that honours our obligations and honours the rule of law. Those are important principles. So we talk about, what the British people...
To be taken seriously, it'd be a good idea if we controlled our own borders, wouldn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And that's what the British people want to see. That's what we're committed to delivering.
And we're not doing it. Numbers are going up.
One of the strongest traditions that we've always had as a country is around the rule of law. That matters. It matters that we have clear enforcement at the border. It matters that we have a clear set of rules around migration. We are toughening those up. The action that the Home Secretary has set out already on this around enforcement, we've removed more people this year who don't have the right to be here. We're processing more cases of asylum seekers more quickly. It is the reason that we're spending so much money on unsuitable accommodation, like hotels, is because for years what the Conservatives did was allow these cases to stack up. It's not right and proper. It's not fair. No,
you say that, but here's the problem. You say you want to get people out of asylum hotels, but you went to court this week to keep an asylum hotel in Epping open. Can you see why, for the average person, it's not clear what you're actually for? You say one thing, but you do another.
I don't want to see large numbers of people accommodated in asylum hotels. I understand how frustrating it is, and I understand how the impact that can have on local communities. That's why we are committed to ending the use of asylum hotels by the end of the Parliament. But we've got to do that in an orderly way. We can't end up with hundreds of people just out on the street because a hotel has closed. So yes, we'll do it. We'll do it carefully, we'll do it properly, and we will do it in an orderly way.
Is it Minister's view, as is said in the Home Office's submission to the judges on appeal, that the rights of asylum seekers trump the interests of local people who do not want those hotels to be open? It says so in the Home Office's submission. Do ministers agree that the rights of asylum seekers trump those of local people?
What we believe is that the Home Secretary and the government have a responsibility to make sure that we are doing our job in processing cases, in accommodating those in the interim who've come to our country. The decision that we saw arising out of the Epping case would have had bigger consequences right across the country that would have led to wider consequences in terms of disruption that would have caused. Look, it's far from ideal. Look, I don't want to be in the place of defending it.
That's what the judges said, but that's not an answer to the question I asked you. Do you agree with the Home Office's submission that the rights of asylum seekers are more significant, more material than the interests of local populations? It
is about a balance of rights. When people come to this country and claim asylum, we have a responsibility as a government to assess their cases and to process them. For those who have got a clear right to be here, for those who have evidenced what they are facing in terms of persecution, refugees, then that will be decided. Where they don't, then we will take action to remove people from the country. So we do have a responsibility to process those cases And yes,
and
to
the
provide
responsibility to
put
those
people
asylum
in
seekers is
accommodation.
more important than the responsibility to those who live locally.
Our responsibility to those who live locally is also important as well. And I completely understand why many people in places like Epping, where hotels have opened up, feel incredibly frustrated about that. They have a right, of course, to demonstrate lawfully and peacefully. Of course, where it crosses a line, that isn't consistent with our long-standing traditions in this country of respect for the rule of law, respect for the police,
hang on.
and our responsibility to make sure that we have safe communities for everybody living there. And given what is alleged to have happened in Epping, I appreciate this is an ongoing case, so I won't go too far in saying much about this. Given what is alleged to have happened, I can understand the concern that causes to local residents.
And can you understand that what you've just said, to someone who lives in one of these towns, Epping or Diss or wherever it is, you said that it's the government's responsibility to balance the rights, as they would put it, of people who've just arrived, made no contribution to this country, against the rights of those who've lived here forever, who pay their taxes, who want their towns to be safe and tranquil. And your view is that these two things, these two sets of people, are equivalent, and you can balance the rights. Can you see how infuriating that must feel to somebody in one of these towns?
I completely understand how frustrating and how angry people will often feel about the use of asylum hotels.
No, that's not what I'm asking about. I'm asking about your view that their interests have to be balanced. That's a different question. Can you see how people would be angry about that?
I do, and we wouldn't be starting from here. Look, I don't want to be in the position of having a number of asylum hotels across the country in operation. That number is coming down. We've got much further to go, and we will close them by the end of this Parliament. And I know people don't like us, even a year in, as a government, saying, this is what we inherited. This is what we inherited, right? There was a widespread use of asylum hotels by the Conservatives that increased enormously at enormous cost to the taxpayer.
Yeah, you keep going back to the Conservatives. I want to ask you...
Yes, but it won't be a quick fix. We will sort it.
Your lawyers, under your guidance, have said in terms that the rights of asylum seekers are more important than the rights of local people in Epping Forest. Would you at least acknowledge that that is what they will hear? And it's up to you. Ministers can say, we agree with that, or we don't agree with it. You can't simply say, let's balance things. Do you agree with what your lawyers said, or don't you?
Yes, of course we do. But what I would add is that whilst I recognise the quite obvious and legitimate concerns that people have about use of asylum hotels, had we not acted in the way that the Home Secretary did around that case, we would have ended up with lots of disruption in terms of what that would have meant around asylum hotels. We will close them, but we will close them in an orderly way, not just where we turf people out on the streets in significant numbers.
All right, let's turn to your own specific area of responsibility. Last year, for the election, you promised that you'd set out and deliver a strategy to end child poverty by spring. Well, that's been delayed. The Archbishop of York describes that delay, called a failure, as, I'm quoting him here, as hugely frustrating and deeply shaming. He's frustrated. Are you ashamed?
I'm ashamed of the very high numbers of children growing up in poverty that we see in our country, so I understand the Archbishop's challenge around bringing those numbers down. It's what I came into politics to do. It's what I believe very strongly, that the family that you're born into, family circumstance, shouldn't determine everything you go on to achieve. It's why we've already taken action as a government. New free breakfast clubs, the childcare expansion that rolls out from tomorrow, 30 hours of government-funded childcare for working parents. And alongside that, just recently we announced the single biggest expansion of free school meals to all families in receipt of universal credit. That will lift 100,000 children out of poverty. But do I accept the challenge that there is more to do on bringing those numbers down further? Yes, I do, and I agree, and this government will deliver that.
I sat with the Archbishop this week and talking to some charity leaders in Middlesbrough area, you know well. It was really interesting. He talked about Church of England schools, where children come to school with empty lunch boxes. They get breakfast, thanks to the breakfast clubs, but then they fill up their lunch boxes at the food bank in the school, or else they'd have no tea when they get home. He thinks that points to and demands the lifting of the two-child cap on benefit, because he and others think that is main driver for child poverty. Are you ready to lift that two-child cap yet?
So as part of the work that you mentioned that I'm leading with the Work and Pensions Secretary on the Child Poverty Strategy, of course we're looking at every way that we can lift more children out of poverty. That does extend to social security measures alongside that. It's not the only way we can lift children out of poverty, and of course it does come with a big price tag. But we know that not acting also comes with serious consequences and impact too. So for those individual children, poverty blights life chances, it holds people back, it's a moral scar on our country, but it damages us all because as a society, as a country, we're less productive, our economy is weaker. So of course there are choices. The choices we've made already around expanding free school meals, for example, will make a big difference. The free breakfast clubs will make a really big difference. And the changes we're making around cutting the costs of school uniform to parents at the start of coming in from next year alongside that too. So we've already made a lot of progress. But yes, I accept that over many, many years, what we've seen is a big increase in the number of children growing up in poverty. Growing up, I experienced some of that myself, so I know what it feels like. I know the damage it has.
It's going to be higher at the end of this Parliament, according to the Child Poverty Action Group.
Well, that is obviously depends upon wider and further government action.
OK. Oh, what would that be, that further government action?
Well, for example, the changes that we're bringing in from tomorrow around access to childcare. Working parents will be able to access 30 hours of government-backed childcare. One of the biggest barriers around child poverty is skills, access to work and other challenges.
Can I just very quickly ask you about a thing that you're talking about today and you've been talking about the last couple of weeks, and that is the poor performance of white British children on free school meals. And you were talking today about the absence rates. I looked at the official statistics, the ONS statistics, and the problem isn't universal. Egyptian traveller children, 3 times likely to be missed classes as the average, but Chinese children are less than half as likely. Something similar for black Africans. What should we learn from those communities?
I mean, this is a complex area. I think that, as you say, the numbers speak for themselves, and particularly where it comes to white children on free school meals. The challenge we see around attendance, around doing well in their GCSEs, is a real one, and I'm determined to grasp it. We'll be setting out more later on this year through the school's white paper. But I think what I see in my own community in the North East, where some of these challenges are really profound, is whether families and whether young people really see the full benefit and value of education, whether they see doing well at school as the route to a good life, because some of these challenges also are about access to good jobs, about the labour market, and on attendance. Okay. This is the start of the new school term is starting. It's an exciting opportunity to really focus on what we can do together, parents, government, and schools, and it's why we're putting more money into backing schools around attendance and behaviour, particularly in some of those communities where we see the greatest of challenges.
Bridget Phillipson, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.